Welcome to Learning with Lerner, where we embark on a transformative journey of knowledge and personal growth. I'm Lindsey Lerner, your dedicated host and guide as we delve into the depths of unconventional wisdom. Together, we'll explore the stories and insights of remarkable trailblazers who have forged their own paths. Brace yourselves for thought-provoking conversations, profound insights, and eye-opening experiences. Our mission is to challenge the norm, ignite curiosity, and empower you to embrace your unique journey. This is Learning with Lerner. Welcome to another episode of Learning with Lerner, the podcast where I sit down and explore to learn about the challenges and opportunities that come with disrupting the norm to create a better tomorrow. In today's episode, we are joined by the one and only Allison Hare, an entrepreneur, activist, and host of the podcast Late Learner. Allison is passionate about helping entrepreneurs, executives, and business professionals to break free from the status quo and make a real impact in the world. With her unique approach that blends practical, spiritual, and emotional growth, Allison has helped countless people overcome their shoulds and reconnect with their true desires. In this episode, Allison shares her own personal journey of getting unstuck and finding fulfillment in her life. She also offers practical advice for anyone who is feeling stuck and wants to make a change. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an executive, or simply someone who wants to live a more aligned and fulfilling life, this episode is for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Here's Allison Hare on Learning with Lerner. Thank you, Allison, so much for taking the time to be here today.
Oh, we're already recording. I'm so glad to be here, Lindsey. Thank you for inviting me.
Heck yeah, absolutely. We'll start where we always do, right at the beginning. If you could share a little bit about where you grew up and how you think that environment shaped you.
I grew up in New Jersey. I live in Atlanta now. And it's interesting because I am a podcaster now and have recently left my corporate job after like 20 something years. I was in technology sales. And it's funny because when I graduated college, I graduated with a degree in broadcasting. I loved being on the radio. I loved everything about it. Public speaking. I always felt like my gift was my voice, but how do I use it as a force for good? I mean,
Totally.
I could talk, I could blow hot air, but can it be used for good?
Right.
And so when I graduated college, there was a radio station in New Jersey. I can't even remember the name of it, but I remember the number was 1067 on the dial. And it was like, back then it was like alternative music before it was alternative. So it was like super cool. I totally wanted to work there. So I sent a stack of pizzas with my demo tape on top in the hopes that they would hire me. And I don't know if they even listened to the tape, but they're like, hell no. But thank you for the pizzas. And, I was like, okay, well, I need to do something. I need to get a job. And I got a job in marketing and in sales. And it kept coming up of just, do I want to make money or do I want to go where my heart is? And I kept choosing money. And, when I was growing up in New Jersey, I don't know if you had this or if any of your listeners have had this, but my mother beat it into my head. Never rely on a man to make money. Always make your own. And so my mother was a stay-at-home mom. She had 6 kids and that totally backfired. My father's businesses tanked. My parents got divorced. We lost the house. We lost, my father left the country. We lost everything. My mother had to go to work and, in those days she was unskilled, even though she was a very competent stay-at-home mother and was pissed about it, honestly, and lived with a lot of regret. And so I would look at her and go, hell no, I'm not going to be poor. I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to do any of the things, all the cautionary tales of my mom. I am not going that way. I'm going to go in the complete opposite direction. So total workaholic, my whole self-worth is wrapped up in money and productivity and like total, like I was like the hustle culture is made for me, or it was made for me. I'm unlearning it now. And it was just that, and so I kept choosing the safe, conventional way of just follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. And a few years ago, I thought, like there's got to be more. Like, this doesn't feel like it, right? This doesn't feel like it fits me.
What did baby Allison want to do? Like when you were a little kid? And also in birth order, where do you fall out of 6?
I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle.
All right. And so I'm an only child, so that's my only lived experience that I can speak to. But I'm always curious, I know you mentioned obviously in college you wanted to go into broadcasting, but when you were a little kid, do you remember anything that you like really wanted to do?
This is embarrassing. I remember watching Mr. Rogers, and I wanted to become an astronaut because I think they had an astronaut come on and I thought the astronaut was hot. That's all I remember about. That's all I remember about my dreams, my big dreams.
That's what it is. And you're full circle back to dreaming big again. So I'll take it.
Right. Reach for the stars.
Right. Exactly. Oh, man. And so what did you do post-graduation after that gig didn't work out?
Oh, I went, like I did what any other normal college grad would do. I became a bartender at a Fridays, and I can flip bottles like Tom Cruise in Cocktail, and I still possess those skills.
Sure. Yes, there's many people that have been on the show that have worked at either Applebee's or Fridays or Chili's and so on and so forth. And so how long did that go down?
I think it was like 4 or 5 years. I've always known myself as like not struggling, but like, like a post-college student. I didn't have a ton of money. I didn't have a silver spoon. I'm just making my way, and it was fine. And I moved to Atlanta from New Jersey and decided I wanted to go into radio, but not on the air, in sales. So I was like radio adjacent.
Do you think that was out of fear? It was like, you're in the industry you want to be in, but making money.
Yeah, I definitely think it was fear. And also, I think because things were so conventional back then, I did the whole pizza thing a bunch of times, from an interviewing perspective. I've always been really good at making an impression or kind of differentiating myself in some kind of creative way. And I went into radio sales, and it was so fun. It was so fun. It was fun. I could make some money. I was still trying to I don't know. Like, I think in my mid-20s, I just thought, I'm a dumbass. Just, put me in cool places. And that's what I did. And it was fun. And I was really good at sales. And this is going to sound like a hard left turn, but I was approached by somebody about Mary Kay Cosmetics. And so I started doing it on the side. I earned a pink Cadillac in 9 months doing it part-time. And I left my corporate job to pursue that. And I did it for 5 years. I was like ranked number 2 in the company. And if you're listening and you're an MLM and think I'm a good target, I'm not anymore. But yeah, it's, I did that. I learned some of the greatest skills that have been so pivotal and have made such a difference in who I am and how I market myself, and in general of just the way I think. And so it was kind of like blending the corporate conventional side, but also like, here's another side where you can have freedom, you can have flexibility, you can get a taste. I bought my first house and made my first 6 figures, in Mary Kay, and did it all by myself. Like, you're an independent contractor. And then I bought the house, bought the car, did everything, spent ridiculous amounts of money trying to look the part, like they talk about fake it till you make it and dress for the part that you want. And instead I got in $45,000 worth of debt. And I'm like, I can't afford this lifestyle. And in the market too, like in recessions, MLMs or alternative careers like that, tend to do really well because people are far more open than in a big economy. And back then it was like 2001, the Twin Towers had come down, it was 9/11, all of that stuff. And so it was booming and then it was crashing. And I left Mary Kay and sold my house, sold my car, sold it all, and was hugely in debt and was like living in somebody's basement in a townhouse and rebuilding and no job, like just trying to figure out going from six figures and like outfits and all of this stuff to just let's go again. Let's do this again. Let's rebuild.
And is that where your approach to personal growth has come from?
It's always been there.
Okay. Well, I think you have an interesting take on it in terms of, the combination of there's a lot of spiritual elements, there's a lot of practical elements, there's emotional elements. Like,
I did not realize this, but when I was younger, I realized it now. This is like literally in the past year or two that I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm a highly sensitive extrovert, which is even more rare. It's like 6% of the population, but a highly sensitive person is an actual thing. It's like a sensory processing thing. So like 20% of the population are considered highly sensitive. And so I used to feel things really deeply and I never felt very seen. I feel like people didn't know what to do with me. I was just trying to fit in. I was different from other kids in that, like I would get picked on, but I was a loud mouth. I would always talk back, but I was really sensitive and just kind of internalized it. And so I've always been into personal development. And when I was, not baby Allison, but like, I don't know, preteen Allison, I really wanted to be a psychologist when I learned what the word psychology meant. And so I went into college as a psych major. And then once I discovered the radio station, that was it. It was lights out, and I knew that my path needed to go a different route.
Totally. Okay. So we left it off as you basically being, pretty damn near rock bottom, or at least in someone's basement with a bunch of debt. What happened next?
Well, the TGI Fridays really worked well for me because I went to work at Longhorn Steakhouse and I got a job at ADP and like at a payroll company. We're making, I think my base salary was $33,000. And I was like, I've got to get out of this debt. And I can't, like, I just have been sold a bill of goods around debt and around money and all of this stuff. So I just hustled and I worked my day job and then went to work at a restaurant at night and then got rid of that debt in 5 years. And I knew that, I hadn't met my husband. I was like the quintessential single girl in Atlanta, just kind of dating. And I knew it just weighed really heavy that if I had this debt, I would be a liability to somebody else. And I don't want to go into a relationship with this debt. Although, like somewhere in the back of my mind, sure, it'd be nice if somebody came like could sweep this away, but that is not the path that was destined for me.
Did you get scooped up from ADP after probably crushing it there? I'm sure.
I worked for ADP for 11 years and I did start to crush it and, got the incentive trips and made money, got to put some money away and then went to Salesforce, then went to DocuSign. And Salesforce was, like it's a big tech company, right? Like it's huge. There's a lot of cachet for working there. It's very high pressure. And so, if people thought ADP was high pressure, like Salesforce is on steroids. And, it was a lot to figure out. And I thought, let me do this for a year and see how I like it. And maybe I'll try and see what else is out there. Can I build something? It was almost like I need to make money. And at that point I had 2 kids and let me see if I can make a go of it. And I just felt kind of like I was in the wrong lane, but I could do it. So I could make money. I made more money than I did at ADP. It was a lot more pressure, a lot more stress. And it also felt like I was lying all the time of just, I don't really care about this stuff. Like I care about how people feel. I care about what is going on behind the curtain. I care about the culture, but what am I going to do with it? And I remember my husband going, Allison, you need a hobby.
You're like,
Like
what's that?
I don't know. Like I was a newer mom and I'd be watching like all the Real Housewives, like every single one that was ever put out. I knew every reality show. I was all up in their business. And, I just felt like there's got to be something more. But what am I good at? I knew I had skills and talents, at least, for like talking or sales, building personality. Like I had a few identified talents and skills, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do with them, and I wasn't using them to my full potential. And as each year passed, it felt increasingly obvious that I was never going to crush it. Like I could crush it enough to get through and make money and, like stay off of anybody's radar. But I was never going to blow it out because I just didn't give a fuck.
This is a conversation I have multiple times a day, given that, this is my main focus now. It's always that question of, hey, I'm in this gig, I'm doing this thing. Some people are making a shit ton of money. Some people are making very little money. But it's always that question of like, I don't know. For 18 months, a very long 18 months, it felt like 18 years. Like I was, as you're speaking, like I'm feeling that just come up. And it was like nauseating every single day. I was like, it physically hurts. I was getting like leg cramps and muscle cramps. And I was like, oh, whatever, I was training for a marathon. I was like, it's fine. It's just that. It's just that. And literally, like, as soon as I had left that gig, everything went away.
Wow.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answer. I don't know if you have a good answer to folks who are considering, what else is there to do? How might we reimagine? How might we rethink what our lives could look like? And then taking that step, not even the leap. Everyone talks about the leap and jumping out of a plane and jumping off of a cliff and all this, flashy bullshit. It's how do you take that first step? And then what?
It's such a process too. I think it's layered. And the reason why it's layered is I've been thinking a lot about this today, recently, and having a lot of conversations around the topic of disassociation. You just explained it. You have these pains in your body and you're thinking, I'm training for a marathon, whatever. I'm just going to push it off. And, there are rashes coming up. I wonder, am I eating something, but your body is literally revolting against you being out of alignment. And I think that the disassociation starts really young. So if somebody says, baby Lindsey, go hug your Aunt Martha. I don't want to hug her. Go hug her. You need to be respectful. She's going to be offended. I don't want to. Like your parent is telling you or your caretaker is telling you, your feelings don't matter. You need to disassociate and do what you're told. And that's like a micro example, right? Like
Sure.
they happen on so many different levels, but we do it to ourselves too. Like,
Totally.
You talk about the cost of the status quo, right?
Mm.
I mean, status quo is I'm completely scheduled. I'm kind of in the hustle culture. I am, on autopilot, but if I think about it too hard, I'm going to have to make a move and that's too painful. So I'm just going to disassociate. I think the answer or to the antidote to that is embodiment. And so if you're going to get back in your body, what does that look like? The good news is that even science and research tell us that listening to birds can actually do that. Like going outside and just instead of tuning into all the traffic and the buzz and all the, like the cacophony of sound, what if that sound, you tune into the birds or something that's more pleasant where all of a sudden it becomes harmony or even the guy in the distance playing drums on the street, like the street musician. And just all of a sudden it becomes harmonious. And that first, like nature, any kind of nature is going to spark joy. The other thing is if it is movement, like you can't help but feel better. Like obviously stagnant energy is when you're sitting at your desk all day and you have not given yourself permission to go outside and take a walk or go outside to move your body or to take that yoga class or whatever. One of the cool things that I did a few years ago, and this was like I was truly in the throes of burnout, just like you said, Lindsey, like the Sunday scaries were really real. I would feel it. I'd be like, all right, I had to mentally prepare to get into this on Monday. I'm going to crush it this week. Like I literally tried to be present. I literally tried to do it. It wasn't that I was resentful towards the job or thought everything sucked. It wasn't that at all. Personally, I felt like I suck. Like, why are all these people crushing it? Why can't I care more? And then like Monday, it would be like, I'd be getting my armor on. Like it's 4:13 now. Okay. I've got 17 more minutes until I can be done with this call. It just felt like my shoulders were crushed and it was just, all right, let me just muscle through this. That was every day. And I stumbled on this dance class and I'm not a dancer. I have no dance background. I stumbled on this dance class. I just happened to have this random week where I had some flexibility and it was like right around Christmas. I stumbled on this dance fitness class and I felt like lightning struck. It felt like, even though I didn't know the moves and I still don't, I have since become a dance fitness instructor for this format. I love it. I'm a huge advocate, but it felt like a rush of joy that I didn't know I was allowed to feel because I'd felt so shitty and twisted for so long that I'm like, wait, is this possible? So that embodiment is like being in your body. And because you are moving, it is higher, like a high intensity interval kind of dance format that you have to be present. And it was amazing to feel joy when I don't remember the last time I felt a pure joy. And, this particular class was in the dark. So I was like all the way in the back in the corner. There were probably 60 people in there. It was packed,
That's so cool.
And it was dark. All the, like the mirrors were sweaty because it was so like it was fogged up.
Right.
So I couldn't see myself, which was probably great, so I wasn't in my head about, looking like an idiot. And by the way, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares if you don't know it, that it helps you move your body. So my answer is embodiment.
You mentioned it earlier about when you're a little kid and your folks or your caregivers force you to go do X, Y, and Z for the benefit of others. And we're taught at such a young age, hey, dude, your feelings don't matter. You need to conform so that everyone else around you feels comfortable, regardless of how uncomfortable you are. That's definitely something that I wish we could collectively figure out in a more meaningful way.
I do think it's cultural. And I do think even us not being able to sit with other people's discomfort is a really powerful statement. If somebody is struggling or if you're struggling, you have to share with somebody like, yeah, I had this surgery or something like that. Or I'm getting a divorce or I'm really struggling with depression or I had to go to rehab. And people are like, oh, like they don't know what to do. Or somebody died, a loved one died. I think it goes back to that disassociation of just not knowing what to do with discomfort. And that if we became more comfortable with the full range of our feelings and emotions, what could be possible and us to be open about it.
As an advocate, I would say, for disrupting the status quo, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that are faced by whether it's entrepreneurs, business professionals, other folks that you may work with as clients, and how might they overcome some of those challenges?
My guess is that the barrier is self-worth. I'm not worthy or I'm going to fail or I'm too afraid to fail. And a lot of that is cultural again of just what will somebody think of me? What if I go on LinkedIn and put that I ended my job to become a consultant, like an entrepreneur? Like, what does all that mean? I do think the simplest way is what lights you up. It's as simple as that. It's the same thing that happened when I went to that dance class the first time, because at the time I used to work out at 5 in the morning till 5:30 with a trainer. From 5:30 till the time I went to sleep, all of it was owed to somebody else, and it was scheduled. It was owed to work. It was owed to my family. It was owed to whatever obligations or whatever things I had on my schedule. My trainer had gone out of town for a week, and because it was around Christmas, I had some flexibility, and I started looking. I was on like ClassPass or something, and I'm looking of like, all right, what kind of strength training, or maybe I'll do, this metabolic conditioning or this weightlifting. And I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. What do I want to do?
Yeah.
What do I really want to do?
Right.
And I think asking yourself that question, what do I want to do? And so I feel like the work that I'm doing now is like, how do I discern my voice from the cultural conditioning, and continuously adding? In the cultural conditioning, it's not your fault. Like if I say, Lindsey, I love your shirt, where do you get it? I could say all day, and let's say we hang out and we're both wearing the shirt going, hell yeah. It's tribal. Like I want to look like Lindsey looks, but we all like to think we're independent thinkers and that we make purely our own decisions. But it's not true. I mean, I think we assimilate with the social groups from where we belong. And so I think that part is the hardest. And when your self-worth is in check, or when you start to discern and kind of dial back into your intuition, it becomes a little bit easier to say no to some of or kind of discern what is cultural conditioning and what is your voice. And some of it, like we can convince ourselves all day long, I have to do this.
Sure
I have to do this. So instead of the shoulds, what is the I want? And let it be wild. Let what you want be wild. Let it be wild, Lindsey. What lights you up, Lindsey? I want to know.
For me, all I want to do, I want to connect with people and I want to connect other people. That's it. All day, every day. That's what brings me the most joy. I get most pants on fire excited about that. And it shows up and it manifests in different ways. It's more so when that intersects with like the monetization of it and the financial aspect of it is where it always goes sideways. And that's the tougher part, because it's like, you're right. And I feel like because I've worked in music for so many years and I'm always around very, very artistic and very creative people, and they have a very definitive, textbook definition of this is their art. They're a musician, they're a painter, they're an illustrator, whatever it is. And I had one of the musicians I work with recently was like, dude, your art is community. That's what you do. I was like, okay. Now I understand why it feels kind of icky to be attempting to monetize it in the same way that when they're talking to me about their music or their paintings or whatever it is, that it feels uncomfortable. I'm like, well, I don't know what to do about that, but that's where we are.
But I wonder, why is community so important? Is it the belonging part? Where is the need that you look to serve? I think if you ask a bunch of 5-year-olds, can you paint? Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you draw?
All they say is yes.
But you ask those same kids when they're 25, can you paint? Can you draw? Can you sing? Can you dance? And they'll be like, no, most of them. Where do we stop? Why do we stop? Why do we stop dancing after college?
Yes. I was talking about that with a friend the other day. It was, what is that moment when you start to have too much awareness, where you start to become self-conscious? And we're like, it's just downhill from middle school. It's like, as soon as, you're in the locker room, you're in the hall, and somebody picks on you, and then it's downhill from there. It's such a bummer.
I'm witnessing this in real time. So I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're starting to get to the age where people are picking on certain things. And both my kids are just different kids. They're just, my daughter's very quirky. She's adorable but just not like all the other girls, and my son is much more, he's highly sensitive, he's quieter, he's shyer, and he's really analytical and thinks like an engineer. And it's interesting to see when my son gets picked on that when I talk to him, he has a very healthy view of himself. He feels proud of himself. He knows where he's strong. He knows he's loved and he belongs at a home. He has really great friends and he has kids that pick on him. And he says, Mom, I'm afraid that I'm bad. And I'm like, what? It's so hard to actually see it unravel. I had somebody named Cindy Robinson on my podcast, and she is a very unconventional parent and teen coach or expert, but everything she says is completely right and totally counterculture to everything we've been taught. It's like the biggest unlearning. And it's amazing because you hear it and you're like, whoa, there's no way. There's no way you stop, you interact with your kid this way or you stop focusing on grades. They need to get into college or whatever. And then when she explains it, like it's about the relationship. It's about, would you rather have a healthy child that understands who they are, that knows how to go after, feels confident in it? The studies show that writing your kids, putting them in every single AP class, writing them on their grades, making sure, like kind of engineering everything around them makes for completely anxiety ridden kids that put a ton of pressure on themselves. But what lights you up? Like if you can stay close to what feels nourishing, what feels healthy, what feels good. Like there was a time a few years ago where I was struggling with body dysmorphia and disordered eating. Most people get that shit in their high school. Not me. I'm in my 40s. All of a sudden, I've got eating disorder. But after I had my kids, I was so committed to not being the mom that let herself go. Like, think of the words that I'm saying, like all the judgment. I was going to be unfettered. I was going to have it all together. I was going to have perfect kids and give them the life and be awesome and all this stuff. The only evidence that I had kids were my kids, not on my body, and I was just going to have it all figured out. And instead, I had body dysmorphia and disordered eating and botched plastic surgery to fix it all. And I think with all of that, like focusing on the control aspect of it, I went to every single specialist. I went to every nutritionist, every therapist, every psychologist, anything, because I could feel myself going crazy. I don't know if you've ever felt that way.
Sure have.
I have never felt that way, but I felt like I know that this obsession around what I put in my mouth, the food that I cook, the food prep, all of the, the mania around this hyper focus on my body, on the control. And I could feel myself going crazy and not know, like, and admonishing myself, like, nobody gives a shit. Like, who cares? But I was so sure that I was like one Dorito away from like being on my 600-pound life. I was just going to happen.
Well, it's all external too.
It's so external.
You're looking at so many things externally because it feels as though you can control all of those external things. And you want someone else to tell you, yes, that's exactly what the problem is. And then you can solve it because you can solve problems.
And every expert, like nobody could help, any conventional expert. And I went to a tarot reader, and with one reading, she reversed all of it. I don't even know if it was the card, like it was the cards. Like I went in like, what about my job? And she pulled these cards that immediately went to food and my relationship with my mom. And She asked me one question and she said, what if you replaced, and this is probably good for your listeners, what if you replaced all of the attention that and focus that you put on food prep, being away from your kids, shopping, meal planning, weighing your food, doing the 5 a.m. workouts, and working with trainer. What if you replace those with something nourishing, like something that feels good, like yoga or going to walk on the belt line? In Atlanta, we have something called, it's like the High Line, Atlanta Belt Line. What if you did that? And I was like, huh? And then for the first time, I went out and took a walk and I could hear the birds and I could see, like, I could feel my body just on this little quick walk where it was like, I don't know, 20 minutes where I went out, or I went out at like 6 a.m. when it was dark and not populated. And just to hear the owl or to notice things and feel like I could breathe again. Like I literally could feel myself breathe. And that was it. That was like the start of what if I could replace what feels like a sickness, and it was a sickness, with something that was nourishing, and it reversed it. It was the only thing. All the conventional methods, everything I went to, nothing until that tarot reading.
I'm pretty far on the hippie woo-woo spectrum, so I'm right there with you. For those of you listening, if you haven't already checked out Late Lerner, definitely go and check it out. It is fantastic. And obviously on the show, you've interviewed a pretty wildly diverse range of folks, CEOs, founders, comedians, artists, all the things. What have been some of your most memorable conversations and why?
The one I'm so proud of was Seth Godin, because he is such a thought leader and so generous through and through and through and through. And so I feel like being a student of his work, I was in his podcast program and his Akimbo workshops and stuff many years ago, but even just getting his email every day, it almost is like, yeah, that feels right. But it's so different than what we're taught. All of my guests are always culture changing. It's always going to be thought provoking. You're going to never leave going out feeling the same way that you came in about whatever the topic is. The biggest gift for me is when people say, I couldn't stop thinking about that thing that your guest talked about or that you talked about. And that's a really cool thing. I've been able to interview Mariella Hemingway, but honestly, I think that the Cindy Robinson interviews, she's been on my show 10 times, and she's that unconventional parent and teen coach. It just lights everybody up because you have to listen with an open mind. You have to listen with an open heart. Having these conversations in your own circles is how culture changes. And the best way to make culture change is to heal yourself and to be self-reflective. And that requires a lot of effort and a lot of work. I would say another episode that was really interesting. I did a whole series on belonging. And I did a series where I would talk about cults. I love cults. I'm like a cult enthusiast.
I love it.
I'm like, how do I start a cult? They just sound fun, like a good cult, right?
Totally.
But like that. But I also had Danielle Bayard Jackson on, and she is literally a certified friendship coach. It's an actual thing. And so she specializes in female relationships, female friendships. And she's been all over CNN. She's been on CBS Sunday Morning. She's been featured on all of these things. She's writing a big book about it. But I had her on my podcast to talk about female friendships. And oh my God, Lindsey, people came out of the woodwork. When I asked them, what are your struggles with your friendships? And people would say, oh my God, like I'm upset with this person, but I'm afraid to tell her. Or, I'm sad that this person left me out. And I think we as a culture say, well, isn't that in high school? Like, isn't that left in a high school? No, it isn't. And the reason why is because nobody talks about it. There is no language to talk about it in a way that you can work through it. That episode is called Should I Friend or Should I Go? And it was like crowdsourced questions that people were really struggling with, like when to cut a friend off and when, you have obligatory friends and people that you may have outgrown and feel bad, or people that you want to get closer to, but you're not sure how, or they're not reciprocating. And how do you do all that stuff? And her message was, our friendships are just as important and require as much work as your romantic relationships. People say, well, I don't want to be dramatic. I don't want to I don't like drama. And she's like, you got to bring drama. And that doesn't mean like, sleep with her husband, but like when you disrupt the status quo and like share how you're feeling, that's when the relationships grow roots. That's when you grow closer, when you learn and when you stand for how you're going to be treated, how you're not going to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And you have better relationships. I just think they're all fucking amazing, Lindsey. I'm not going to lie.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
Exactly.
Ugh, I love it. I love it. Well, before we wrap up, I do ask every amazing human who comes on the show 2 questions. And that is, what is the worst piece of advice that you've ever gotten? And of course, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
I think I answered both those questions actually. And one of them was my mom saying, never rely on a man to make money. And
is that the best or the worst?
And I'll tell you why. Well, they're probably worse advice, but the reason why I thought that was bad is that, I used to wear it like a badge of honor. Like, hell yes, I am a powerful woman. I can go out and get what I want. I can make money. I'm self-sufficient. I'm a badass. And that was the badge of honor that I proudly waved. And, a couple years ago, I was just in a dark place and I was like, hiring some coach about whatever, money mindset. I don't know, like some woo-woo spiritual entrepreneur coach, and she was asking me about it. And she's like, when your mom told you that was trauma. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, that's traumatic. You were being told that the world and people around you are too dangerous. And I was like, I would have never, ever thought that. And not that I thought my mom was, like anybody's out to get me or just dumb. I think it was just, she did the best that she could and was trying to protect me in the best way that she could, And so I think that was probably the worst advice. I think the best advice was, what if you replaced all this negative shit, stuff you hate, with stuff you love? And what could open up for you? And so I think just having that curious, open-minded mindset of just being open of what could happen if. And I think that mindset of possibility and curiosity, I read many years ago, I think it was in Psychology Today. I don't know if you read that magazine. It's so fascinating, actually. And they had a study that they said the happiest people are the most curious. And the reason why is that if you're a know-it-all, like I don't think anybody thinks they're a know-it-all, but we all know people who are know-it-alls. But if you're a know-it-all, then you're constantly disappointed. And when you're curious and open, then it leads to more wonder. And if you're in a state of wonder, that wonder is where wisdom comes in. When you follow it.
Couldn't have ended on a better note. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsey. This was a blast. Thank you for asking such insightful questions.
Thank you for being here. Oh. Thank you for listening to Learning with Lerner and hearing the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LindseyLerner.com. Or if you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening and have an awesome day.